Okay, so in this lesson we are going to start looking at implementing these other functionalities. For example, editing a to-do or deleting a to-do, toggling the status for a certain to-do. But let's start with deleting a to-do. So if you go back to our editor and in our app.js, we've got this to-do list, and the to-do list basically has this to-do item which receives a to-do, and that's exactly what we need, right? So, and this is the button which is responsible for deleting the to-do. Okay, so that's the cross sort of a icon or the button. So here we will listen for on click event, that when a user clicks on that cross button, we will get an event here. And let's think about this. So we need to have an access to the to-do where this button was clicked on, right? So that means let's have a function called handle delete, and we already have access to the to-do item which is being passed down, so we can just pass it onto this function itself, right? So that means what I can do here now is say const handle delete, and it will receive the to-do item. And for now, let's see what we get. Okay, so if I go back to the browser and bring up the console, and let's see, when I click on this, there we go, I should be able to get this to do, right? So if I click on this, I am getting the right to do. There we go. Okay, so this is exactly what we need. Now that we have access to this to do, what we can do is we can now pass a function down from the parent and as a prop, and then we will pass this to do from here through that function. Exactly the same thing as we did in the add new to do, right? So I'll go back to the app.js, and here handle on delete to do, and that will accept a to do. Okay, so the way this is going to work is that we are going to pass this handle on delete to do down to the to-do list, and then from to-do list we'll have to pass it down to to-do item. So this is basically called prop drilling. Okay, this is where once we get into the Redux way of doing things, this will become much more cleaner and easier to manage. But for now, let's carry on. So what I will say is that on delete to do, that's going to be our prop that we will pass to the child. Okay, so that means now I can go to my to-do list, and here on delete to do, and we will pass this on to do item. On delete to do is equal to on delete to do. Okay, and then if we go back to do item, that means now we have on delete to do, and we can simply pass this to do item to this function. So let's go back to app.js and let's see it is working the way we would expect for it to work. And now if I clear the console and click on this to do, yeah, so now the parent is receiving this to do. Okay, so that means what we can do now is that we can get our to-dos first, state.todos, and we can filter, which will give us a to-do, and then we can check. So just to keep it a bit more clear, we will say that give me all the to-dos where to-do item ID is not equal to to-do.id. So once we have filtered to-dos, then we can just set the state, right? And we can pass to-dos here. Okay, so now if we come back and I click on this .setState.todos is undefined. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, so this needs to be state, not set state. Okay, go back, refresh, and let's see. Yeah, it's working as expected. Great, so we've got now deleting to do functionality in there. Okay, but obviously when I refresh, everything is back to as it were because we're not persisting it. Okay, great. So now let's move on to editing a to-do. Okay, so in order for us to edit a to-do item, what we need to be doing is adding a class to this list item. Okay, so when we add that editing class, the to-do item becomes like an input element. Okay, and obviously we need to find a way that we can conditionally add this editing class to this list item here. Okay, looks like we need to have a piece of state in here. Secondly, we need to be listening for a double click. Now, there is nothing like on double click in React, but what we can do is we can tap into the native event and we can get the detail out of that event, and that way we can check if it's been double clicked. Okay, so let's get into the code and it will make more sense. Okay, so let's listen to the on click event on this, and we will say on double click. So this is going to be our function, and let's define it as a constant as we do, and it will accept an event, and this is going to be an arrow function. Okay, so if I now console log e.detail, if that's correct, so let's have a look. If I come back and click, there we go. So basically every time that I click, it gives me an integer showing me how many times I have clicked, right? And that's exactly what we need. So what we can do here is we can say if e.detail is greater than or equal to 2, that means it's been double clicked, or more than twice it's been clicked, right? So then we can say, okay, handling double click. Okay, if I can spell that correct. So let's go back, and there we go. So every time now when there is more than one click, that signals the application that it's been double clicked. So we're good with that functionality. Now at the same time, we also want to be having some sort of conditional where we can add a class and remove a class, right? So for that, I'm going to again use state hook. So it will be use state. Okay, and then use state, and the state is going to be editing, maybe. Yeah. Okay, and the initial state is going to be false. And I think there is a spelling mistake here, so this needs to be use state. Okay, so that looks good to me. Here, what we can do now is we can say const editing class, and then we can check editing. If that's true, then go ahead and add this editing class. Otherwise, just have an empty string. Okay, and then we can come back here and we can use template literals. And that means that now I can just basically say that if it is a completed class, and that will get the value from here, and I can also get the editing class, right? Hope that makes sense. Okay, so basically they both are conditionals, right? And in this case, an editing class, we're just looking for the editing. If it has been set to true, then it will output the editing. Otherwise, it's going to be an empty string. So if I come back, refresh, yeah, nothing has changed. Okay, so what we can do now is we can say set editing, and we can pass the opposite of what editing is. So if it is true, then it will become false, right? If it is false, then this will become true. So if I refresh, double click, it becomes an input. Double click, and it becomes rendered to-do item. The next step for us is being able to pass the updated title for the to-do to its parent component, that's app.js, and update that particular to-do item, right? So that means we are going to need some state. So this is going to be the title. Now initial state is going to be to-do.title. Now we can do exactly the same as we did in the add new to-do, where we were listening for enter key, right? But I want to show you another way, and probably my favorite way of dealing with these inputs and stuff, okay? And that's basically wrapping the element, a form element. So what I mean by that is if I come back here, and so if I can wrap this in a form element, I mean, for me, it just makes sense. It's, you know, better semantics from accessibility point of view. I would prefer a form element. And here I can say on submit, and then I can have a function which is going to listen for that on submit event. So if I come here and say const handle submit, and that's going to, we need to get the state from here. So that means, let me put this on its own line, clean this up. Value is going to be title. On change, we will update the title. So let's get the event, pass in an arrow function, set title, and that's going to be event.target.value. Yeah, so this will ensure that we get the initial value, and that's why we set it to do title. But when we change it, it will update the state. So if I now come back here and I say React training, see it's already populated with existing to-do title. Same here. Okay. So the next step for us is being able to pass the updated title to app.js, and here we will update that to-do item. So that means we need to repeat the process what we did for add new to-do. So let's just create a function here in app.js, and we will say handle update to-do. It will accept a title and the to-do that we need to update. And for now, let's just console log to-do and the title. Let's see what we get. Okay, that also means that we will have to pass this. So let's just clean up a little and put these on their own lines so they're a bit less confusing. That's the problem with the props drilling. On update to-do, and that's going to be a function, this dot handle update to do. We'll go down to to-do list, and here we have on update to do. So that's something I did behind the scene. Didn't want you guys to watch me sort of cleaning this up, but we accept the on update to do, and then we just pass it along. We don't do anything with that within the to-do list component. So if you go down to to-do item now, we can accept this here on update to do, and right here we can call that function and we can pass to title and to do. Let's just make sure that is the case. So let's go back. Yep, title and to do. So that means if I come here now and edit one of these, I should get title and the to-do object. Great. So it looks like everything is wired up correctly. So what we need to do now here is we just need to update the list of to-dos. So there are probably more than one way of doing this, but I'm going to use map. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. So I'll say const to-dos is equal to this dot state dot to-dos, and then we will map over them. Okay, so that means we'll get a to-do item, and here I can check if to-do item dot id is equal to to-do dot id, and then we will spread. I am not sure why do I get this in my editor, but anyway, so we will spread out whatever we have in the to-do item, and then we will just update the title. So I could say title, but they're both the same, so I can get away with this. Okay, but if that's not the case, then we will just return to-do item, and I haven't spelled that correctly. Okay, so that means that I can call this dot set state, and with any luck that should work for us. So let me refresh, and let me say and something. So it seems like it is working, but I would want this field to revert back to the rendering mode when I press enter key, which obviously is not working at the moment. So let's go back and see what we can do. So if I come back to do item right here, so when I pass that title and to do to the on update to do function right here, so then I can say set editing to false. So if I come back now and refresh, and let's see, so if I say and some, that's working as expected. Let's move on now to toggling the status for these to-do items. So ideally, when we parse these to-do items, I would like to see they being checked if they are completed, right? And the active to-do items wouldn't have these check marks, okay, to start with. But then when I check the checkbox here, then it will change the class for this to-do item to completed, and also the check mark should stay here. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's go to our code editor and let's find out what we can do. So this is basically the input which is responsible. Okay, so let me put everything on a new line so we have a bit more room to work with. And if you read about the checkboxes, there are a couple of ways that you can work with checkbox in React. So the first way is basically providing a default checked property and then binding that to, for example, in our case, it would be todo.complete. There is another way as well that where you can just do it like how you would do any normal input, but here it will be providing checked rather than, you know, a value. So let's just do it this way. But as I said, you can also do default checked. Okay, so that's two ways of doing this. So we will say checked is equal to, this is going to depend on todo.completed, and then whenever there is change event, so somebody clicked on it, we want to call a function, and we will create this function here, const, and it will have an event. And the way you get the value out of the event is e.target.checked. So that will basically give you the value that you need. So if I refresh, and here we go. So these are completed to do, so they have got these check marks. But if I click on this, I get true. If I click on this, because it's false, I get false, and that's what we need. Okay, so now we need to pass this value back to parent, and the parent basically needs to update this to do, right? So here's what I'm thinking. What we could do is we can say on status changed, maybe that would be a function that we would receive. So let's call handle toggle status. That sounds better, right? And we will receive some sort of a checked value, and then we can also receive a to-do so that we know which to-do we need to update, right? And for now, let's just cancel log to-do. Okay, so we need to pass this now here, and I'm sure that you are hating this as much as I am. We will say on status toggled, and this will have this function. Okay, go down to to-do list. We will say on status toggled. Again, this component is not doing anything with that event, it's just basically passing it on. Okay, and then if I come here to do items, so this becomes on status toggled. Okay, so that means what I can do here now is I can say on status toggled, and I can pass e.target.checked and also to do item. So now if I come to the browser, refresh, and let's see, beautiful. So we are now receiving this, remember, from the parent, the app.js, because we're cancelling out the console logging the to do item here. So this is going to be pretty much the same thing what we were doing here. We just need to get to-dos, map over them, find the right to-do, update the status on it, and then set the state again. So yeah, pretty much the same. So let's basically get this, and ideally you should be creating a function, because yeah, you can have like a function here and they both can call the same function, but that's okay. For now we'll just stick to copy and pasting, right? So what I can say here is completed is going to be the checked value. And now that I have my to-dos, I can just do this dot set state and pass in to-dos. Okay, so with any luck, if I refresh, beautiful. Okay, and we can uncheck and check. Okay, so that's all for now. We've accomplished quite a few things in here. We've got now the functionality of adding to do. We can toggle the status if we want, and we can delete. We can also edit. So I will see you guys in the next video.